Alright guys, this week's story is called A Tree is Growing by Arthur Duros, illustrated by S.D. Schindler. Even though on the cover of the story you kind of see maybe what looks like illustrations, this is actually an informational text. It's going to give us factual information about a certain topic. Okay, so before I begin reading, since it says a tree is growing, and I know this is going to be nonfiction, I'm guessing that this story is about trees and maybe how they grow. A giant tree may look as if it has always been big, but even the biggest tree keeps growing and changing. In the spring you can see that a tree is growing as you watch the buds on the branches unfold into leaves. Notice over here we have a sidebar, so a little additional information. Bristlecone pines are the oldest known living trees on Earth. Some have been growing for 5,000 years, since before the pyramids in Egypt were built. Leaves can be skinny needles or big heart shapes. Whatever the shape or size a leaf is, it makes food for the tree. A kind of sugar is made in the leaves. Trees use the sugar as food. The sugary water made in the leaves is mixed up with other tree juices called sap. The food in the sap is carried throughout the tree. Where a branch breaks or where bark is cut, sap oozes out of the tree. The strong smell of some saps can keep insects from eating the trees they live on. As we study the pages before moving on, it's important you take time to look at any additional text features that have been included. In this case, we've got labels. Each of the different kinds of leaves have a label. This one's a white oak, a palm, ginkgo, an empress tree, a breadfruit tree, which is this one over here, white pine, and red maple. So these pictures and labels are included to show us what the text basically says. That basically many different leaves can be different shapes and sizes. And then over here in the sidebar we have a little additional text. This could be a caption that goes with this picture. If you rub a sassafras leaf, the sap smells spicy. Down here for this picture, it says maple syrup is boiled sap of a sugar maple tree. A tree needs sunlight, air, and water to grow. Water travels through passages in the trunk and branches up to the leaves. The water moves up the trunk as if it's being sucked through a straw. Sugary sap made in the leaves travel down the other passages into the trunk, taking food to different parts of the tree. So on this page they included a diagram. The diagram, it's a picture of the inside of a branch, okay? This blue here represents the water, and we know that because of the label here. And the arrow shows us how the water is traveling up the branch. We call this kind of text feature a diagram. A diagram is any kind of picture or visual that's included in the story that has labels to help explain something. Now this is really helpful to me as a reader because it shows me what the text below talked about. So it's always important to take time to study these things as we read. A moth caterpillar, so that's showing a little insect living in the tree. Now over here in this sidebar, there's a little additional information. We definitely don't want to skip that. Take time to study that as well. A boab tree stores water in the trunk. When the boab tree trunk is swollen with water, it is round and fat. In dry weather, the tree gets water from the trunk. Then the trunk gets thinner. So in this picture, the tree has a lot of water stored in the trunk, and that's why it's big and fat. And down here, the trunk is slimmer, meaning the tree must have had to use some of the stored water. So again, these pictures have been added for a specific purpose. The author put those pictures there to give us a visual and help us understand the information below. Be sure to always take time to study pictures, graphs, charts, any visuals that are included in the story. It's important you take time to look at those and study them and figure out how they can help you as a reader, understand the information. The roots of a tree grow into the ground and hold the tree in place. Roots are like pipelines. They absorb the water and carry it into the tree. A tree's roots spread out far underground. They usually grow out a little further than the tree's branches. The trees need minerals to grow. Minerals are tiny particles that are found in the soil. Salt is one kind of mineral. Like salt, other minerals dissolve in the water. They are mixed in with the water that roots absorb and are carried throughout the tree. Mushrooms grow among the roots of a tree can help it get minerals, and the mushrooms and plants growing near the tree get water brought up by the trees. This is a bicolored boletus mushroom. So this label is telling us what kind of mushrooms these are. This is telling us this is a white oak tree. Earthworms and beetles are down here in the soil beneath. It says a few kinds of trees drop roots from the branches into the soil to gather water. Banyan trees, tree roots grow into columns all around the tree. And so this picture here is showing us what this information below is describing. Growing roots are strong. A root can lift a sidewalk or split a rock as it grows. By splitting the rock, it helps make soil. Bark is the skin of a tree. The outer layer of bark protects the tree. When an oak tree is young, the bark is as smooth as a baby's skin. As the tree grows older, the bark becomes rough and cracked. This is a flicker, a Polyphemus moth right here on the tree. Okay, over here in the sidebar, more information about tree coverings. Looking at the bark of a tree can help you know what kind of tree it is. The cork used for bulletin boards is peeled off outer bark of a cork oak tree. Honey locust bark has spines to protect the tree. And this is a picture of those spines. The bark you can touch and see is not growing anymore. Underneath it is a layer of growing bark called cambium. Each year's cambium growth is a ring in the wood of a tree. As trees add new cambium, the trees become bigger around. Next to the cambium are two layers called the xylem and the phloem. Water from the roots move through the xylem, and sap from the leaves move through the phloem. Okay, again over here, they've kind of given us a diagram to help us understand the bark and how it has different layers, just like it says over here in the text. The diagram is helping us understand the information we read. This shows us the growth rings that it talked about. This outer layer here is the phloem. Okay, if you remember in the previous pages, it said that the sap moves down the phloem into other parts of the tree. Okay, the cambium is this layer here inside that keeps getting bigger and bigger as it grows, and it makes those growth rings. And the xylem is right here in between. It is the layer where water travels up to the leaves and other parts of the tree. Over here in our sidebar it says, in cool climates, cambium only grows in spring and summer. Count growth rings to see how old a tree was when it died. An old fir tree can have over 1,000 rings, one for each year it lived. So when you count the growth rings, that tells you how many years old the tree was. In a tropical rainforest trees, the cambium grows all year, and there are no rings. It is hard to tell the age of these trees. Trees grow bigger around, and they grow taller. As a tree grows, lower branches may fall off, making the trunk look longer. But the branches do not move upward on the trunk. As a tree grows taller, only the top. A tree grows taller only at the top, as the tips of the top branches grow upward. If you find a mark on a tree trunk today, that mark would stay at the same height for as long as the tree lives. Over here in this sidebar, it says sequoias are some of the tallest trees in the world, over 300 feet tall. Look down here at these little people. The people have been added in this picture to help us understand just how tall sequoias can be. 300 feet, that's a number, and we may realize that's a large number, but when they add the picture of the people near the tree, that helps us really understand just how tall these trees can get. Same thing over here. This picture that the author added helps me understand the information we just read here. It says if you mark the place, or if you find a mark on a tree trunk today, that mark would stay the same height for as long as the tree lives. And that's what it's showing us in this picture. Here's our mark at 10 years. The mark's in the same place at 20 years, same place at 30 years, same place at 50 years, still in the same place 200 years later. Because like this part of the text explains, the trees grow from the very top. This picture here on this page 86 helps the reader understand that. In the spring, you can smell tree flowers. Tree flowers are found in many shapes and colors and have many different smells. Parts of the flower grow to become seeds. Oak trees have dangly clumps of flowers called catkins that help make acorns, the seeds of an oak tree. Okay, why do you think for a minute why all these other labels are around the page in different kinds of leaves? Okay, if you take time to study it, you realize that these are different seeds of different kinds of trees. There's the catkins that talked about of an oak tree. This is what the seeds look like in a sugar magnolia. Here is what the seeds would look like in a wild cherry. They grow from the blossoms. Okay, and it also labels the animals and insects that are around. That's interesting. Over here in the sidebar, again, the animal is labeled a nectar-eating bat. Birds, insects, and even bats are attracted to flowers to drink their sweet juices. When they brush the flowers, the animals get a powder called pollen on them. The animals carry the pollen to other flowers. When the pollen mixes with certain parts of the flower, seeds grow. Wind also helps pollinate flowers. An oak tree can drop more than 50,000 acorns in 1 year. Only a few of them grow into oak trees. Most are eaten or crushed, rot, or land in a place where they cannot take root. Acorns can be carried away and dropped or buried by animals to grow in new places. Other kinds of seeds blow in the wind or float on water. Okay, there's our acorns that talked about in this part of the text. But this is a sugar maple seed, and as you see, these little extensions around the seed help it to float in the air so the wind can carry it to new places. Over here in our sidebar, it says different kinds of trees make seeds with different coverings. Nuts, cones, and fruits all have seeds inside. And here's some different examples of the different seeds. There's a Brazil nut, mountain pine cone, and a cherry, all of which have seeds inside, just like the text tells us here. Coconuts are seeds of a palm tree. A coconut can float across an ocean and sprout on a sandy beach. In cool climates, trees stop growing in autumn. The leaves of many trees stop making sugary food for the tree and they lose their green color. You can see the red, brown, and yellow, orange colors that are also in the leaves. Pine trees and some other trees have needles or leaves that do not change color in autumn. Autumn is a great time to collect leaves. Each tree has its own special color, and there it labels the different kinds of tree leaves that change color. When leaves fall to the ground and insects and worms eat them, the chewed and eaten bits of leaves make the soil better for the growing trees and other plants. Trees rest in the cold of winter and their branches are bare. They may look as if they are dead, but look closely and you can see small buds that will become leaves and flowers in the spring. In the spring, listen to the wind rustling. The trees are growing again. Take out your reading journals and write this about our story. I learned that, and write 3 facts you learned as we read our story today.